What we see here is an SMC A52, or as the box says, 52-inch decorative reversible ceiling fan model A52 S series. It has bi-reversible blades. One side cane inserted and one side plain wood. Unique, patented, durable motor. Ooh, so excite. Inside the box, as you can see on this side, is brown and antique brass. This side also shows the light options that were available at the time. It was also available in brown and bright brass. The fan was sold at Kmart. And here we have the fan itself. Sold at Kmart in the early 80s, very early 80s, possibly 1981, maybe 1982. It is variable speed, as evidenced by the nifty little knob and the unique to the variable speed A52 two-piece ribbed bell canopy. Here we have the actual motor tag, which is conveniently located on the side of the motor housing where all can see it. Model A52, 120 volt, 1.2 amps. So, the motor inside this thing is actually a modified Laguna motor. The top end bell is the same as any 52-inch Laguna. It has all the motor screw holes and everything. The bottom end bell is where things get weird. See, the bottom end bell was modified in terms of design to accommodate the larger blade irons. So, the pull chain is a forward reverse off pull chain. Inside the switch housing, I opened the switch and took off the switch cap to make sure the light lead was capped and all that fun stuff. There is a metal plate separating the light leads from all the rest of the electronics inside the switch housing, which is very unique considering that's usually just a paper card. I have not opened it up further to see what lies within, but it should be pretty normal. So, it's got that nice dark golden tassel, which came with all SMCs of the era. Like I said, I got it brand new in its box at Habacrap for a pretty decent sum. But anyway, let's see how it performs. You know, it does not start on low, on the lowest setting on the variable speed control. The manual actually says that it will not start on low. You have to start it from the high or medium range setting on the knob. So let's give it some oomph. Let it get going. And then dial it back a notch to your desired setting, which in this case is a nice aesthetic low. Now, interestingly, the fan comes with a little chamois, a little microfiber cloth to wipe down the finish with. Specifically, it came with the 24 karat gold-plated models. I mean, such as the ornate version, which was brown and gold, whereas the other one was brown and antique brass. As some of you may know, I have that version, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, the fan came with a little chamois to wipe down the finish, which I think is pretty damn cool. Inside the motor housing, I think some of the threads from the vent screen are rubbing against the motor because it's rustling around. Also, for some silly reason, there is a wire nut trapped in the housing, which I've yet to extricate, but will do sooner or later. This is a pretty low setting on the control. Let's see if we can dial it back just a little more, so you can get it a little slower. And there we go, we're at the lowest setting on the variable speed control. So this is the factory low. Now I think the reason the manual says it cannot be started on high or medium, or will not be started on the lowest setting, is because the bearings have to break in first. Like I said, because the fan is new in its box, the bearings have to break in. They have to run for about 24 hours to smoothen out and such. So because of that fact, there's too much resistance and the fan doesn't want to start on the lowest setting, but once you start on high, you get it going first, then dial it back. And as seen here, the fan actually runs at a nice aesthetic low pace, of which I friggin' love. Interesting with this version is that the fact that it has an ornate switch cap. These were typically only used with the Emperor. Okay, so now that we have our aesthetic low down, let's dial it up maybe an eighth of a turn. Now it's more of a usable low, more functional low. This is actually the typical low speed of any 3-speed SMC, in case you were wondering. Well, put it up another eighth of a turn, get it to a medium. The fan has a little bit of wobble, which isn't unexpected, but it's not a terrible, terrible wobble. Now, because this fan uses the Laguna motor, it does not moan as audibly as later SMCs, such as the Emperor. Well, no, the Emperor uses the same Laguna motor, but later, like mid-80s and beyond SMCs, the big fat heavy UFO motor, brown with 4 little raised ridges running longitudinally between the edge of the motor and the bearing, but different that's a different motor, so different performance. Let's put up another eighth or so of a turn. Another eighth or so. Now it's starting to move some air. The blade pitch is pretty shallow, maybe 11 degrees, maybe 10.5 degrees. And the reason is something I'll get to in a second. Alright, let's put the fan straight up high. And the reason the blade pitch is so shallow is because of the fact that it uses the Laguna motor. Now, the Laguna motor is also, by nature, an industrial motor, which means it is meant for high speed and low torque. So since it has low torque and it runs at high speeds, they would have to lessen the blade pitch a bit in order to make it actually perform up to snuff, whereas later versions came with a bit of a steeper pitch because the motor was actually designed more for torque rather than high speed. Now, according to the manual, the fan runs at 220 RPM on high. Moving a fair amount of air, but not as much as some other fans due to the shallow pitch. So this fan technically works more off of speed than it does blade pitch. The motor housing, some think it's cast iron, but they are wrong. The motor housing is actually heavy gauge stamped steel, made to seem like cast iron. However, the motor coupling, motor downrod coupling, that's cast iron though. It's the only cast iron bit, or maybe either way, it's some kind of cast metal, not necessarily iron. Anyway, I did say the fan had a forward reverse pull chain, and now we're going to demonstrate that for you. Also shows startup from high. Now, it's also because it's using a Laguna motor, you should also know that these run faster in reverse than they do on forward downdraft. So it probably does a little faster than 220 on high and reverse. Now we're going to turn it off and let it spin down. Because the bearings have yet to be broken in, the spin down time will not be as long as it normally would be. And there you have it. A variable speed antique brass and brown SMC A52 sold at Kmart.